and welcome to the Divorced Women's Guide podcast, where we talk about the things us divorcees are thinking, but not always talking about, as we turn our divorce into the best gift we've ever been given. And I do so with a little bit of sass and a whole lot of class. I am your host, Wendy Sterling, founder of the Divorce Rehab. I am here to support you in this transition phase of your life so you can start your new best chapter on your own terms. After all, that's what I did after my own divorce. And now it is my mission to change the conversation around divorce and help you see why your divorce, like mine, was the best gift you ever received. Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of the Divorced Woman's Guide podcast. I am so excited to have you guys here with me today because I am joined by my dear friend, Kate Anthony. Hello, Kate. How are you?
Hello, Wendy. I'm so happy to be here.
Me too. I am so incredibly honored to have you here and to have you as a guest on my podcast today. So I'd love to share with everybody a little bit more about you before we dive into our conversation around should I stay or should I go, which Kate and I, as she said so eloquently, I have to give you complete credit for. Kate and I kind of rest on two different sides of the divorce shelf. We're bookends to one another. And I'm super excited to dive into this topic today because she is a wonderful expert on it. So Kate is the host of the critically acclaimed podcast, the Divorce Survival Guide podcast, and the creator of the groundbreaking online coaching program, Should I Stay or Should I Go?, which helps women make the most difficult decision of their lives using coaching tools, relationship education, geeky neuroscience, which is my favorite part of what you bring to the table too, community support, and deep self-work. And Kate really empowers women to find their strength, passion, and confidence, even in the most disempowering of circumstances, and helps them to move forward with concrete plans, this is my favorite line, Kate, and I give you credit every time, by putting your children at the center, not the middle of all decisions. Kate also spent 3 years and over 500 hours of training in various coaching modalities with two of the top coach training organizations in the world, and is also widely known as an expert in communication, co-parenting, divorce, and emotional intelligence. And Kate does live here also in Los Angeles with her son, who she lovingly co-parents with her ex. She also has 2 pups and a handful of fish. You're so cute. Can't forget those damn fish.
Not forget the fish. They're very important.
I love it. I love it. Well, I'm so thrilled for you to be here today. And, you and I have had so many different conversations. We've been blessed by being, on panels together, which has been really fun, and our paths have crossed. And it's an honor to be part of this community that you have been a part of and have welcomed me with open arms. And I'm so grateful to you for that. And I've learned so much from you, and I'm really looking forward to diving in with you today around, what it is that you are the expert in, which is really around, should I stay or should I go, right? There's so many decisions that weigh into that choice that people make. And so I would love for you to dive a little bit into, how do you even start wrapping your mind around making that choice? How do you know, right, what the right decision is?
Yeah, it's really hard. It is the biggest decision probably that you'll ever make in your life. And I would venture to guess that people, women in particular, probably spend more time trying to figure out this than they do trying to figure out if they should actually marry the person that they're trying to decide whether they should divorce.
So true.
Right?
So true.
We're so excited about the marriage thing, and we don't think it through enough. I don't think. We don't do enough work. We don't, premarital counseling, like all of those things. We just kind of gloss by it because it's fun. And so we put so much more thought into, should I stay or should I go? And it is, like I said, it's probably the biggest decision you'll ever make in your life. And when I was making this decision, what I really wanted was a burning bush. I really wanted, I had been asking myself this question. I'd been agonizing for years about this. And I really wanted, like, you know, a burning bush or, you know, something, Morgan Freeman to come down from the sky. Like I needed someone to tell me, yes, you've done everything you can. You really have. Now you can go. Or like, no, just around the corner. Cause he always thinks like, oh, just one more thing. There's just one more thing around there. And, you know, but what I really needed and what I wanted and what I think people really need is kind of a system, right? Like, what are the things that we have to examine to be able to come out the other side with clarity? And so that's what I've created with my program. And that's really what I help women with for the most part. And it's, so the things that we really have to look at, I've sort of broken it out into almost three sections, really. And the first thing that I have to look at is our own selves and our own operating systems. And right, because a lot of the time we're like, is it him or is it me? He says it's me. I think it's him. I don't know, right? We're caught in the middle. And so we have to look at ourselves first, and we have to do that self-work, you know, and that includes, you know, I do inner guide work and inner critic work and mining for values and like all of that stuff that you and I were trained in.
Yeah.
Because spoiler, Wendy and I went to the same coaching school. And so so all of that stuff, but then also like, you know, what is my attachment style? What is my love language? Am I bringing to the table all of the information and knowledge about myself? You know, am I a healthy communicator or am I reactive? Am I right? And so once we sort of deal with all of that stuff, then we can move into the sort of outside influences, right? So that's like the internal work. And then there's the outside work, which is like, what is marriage? What is it to be married in the 21st century? What are the relationships between cis hetero couple romantic relationships at this juncture? You know, how is the patriarchy affected? How does women's having to bear the mental load, right? If you're going to leave this marriage and you're going to get into another one that's basically, you know, set upon the same structures, like, you know,
right,
contained in the same systems, like it might look the same, right?
Well, and I would imagine part of that too is, you know, society defines us, right? When we're married, right? We get put in these boxes of wife, mother,
Yes.
and then we lose this, which is why that first step of really looking at yourself in the mirror is so important, because there isn't a societal box specific to you. You have to create that yourself.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's so funny. I'm about to start I don't know when you're going to air this, but I'm about to start a campaign that I hope that you'll actually get on board with, which is like hashtag campaign, hashtag who the hell am I? Because it's exactly that. We have all of these constructs and all of these roles that we play, or that society tells us that we have to play. But who am I outside of a wife, outside of a mother, right? Who am I as a human? And so many women, we really don't know. And so that's such an important step, right? And then the third thing that I really do is we dig into, you know, emotional abuse and narcissistic abuse. So many women I work with are being emotionally abused and they don't know it. They just don't. They've been in it for so long that it feels normal to them. And I hear some of their stories and I'm like, are you kidding? Like, no, that's not okay. So we do need someone to tell us that it's not okay. I know I did.
Yeah. And I mean, let me ask you a quick question, if you don't mind, around that. I mean, people who are going to be listening, right? How can they get out of their own way, out of their own belief, you know, system that tells them today that the way that their spouse speaks to them is okay, but yet in reality, you know that deep down something doesn't feel right. So how does somebody even awaken to realizing that there is verbal abuse happening?
Yeah, it's really tricky and it's really hard. I mean, I think that, you know, one of the things that I run a Facebook group that's got over 2,000 women in it, and the stories are just constantly pouring out of these women. And I think that there is something about when women gather in community, that we start telling stories and we come out of the shadows. I like to talk about, I don't like to talk about it, but I do talk about the fact that, you know, women's greatest power is when we're in community. And part of the reason that the patriarchy has us in these single family homes is that, you know, I call the white picket fence as jail bars, right? They're patriarchal jail bars, they're keeping us apart. So when we find ourselves in rooms together and we start telling our stories, we get that mirroring and reflecting back, and other women are able to. So I think, you know, the first thing I have women do is write it all down, whether it's in a Facebook group, whether it's in my group, in your group, write it all out, tell your story out loud, and then read it back to yourself. And what would you say if you heard another woman telling the story? What would you say if you heard your daughter if your daughter came to you and said, this is my story of my relationship? Mm-hmm. What would you say? And sometimes it's like really clear, like when women write it all out and they read it back and they're like, oh no, what? You know, when they're horrified by their own words.
Yeah. Because it's almost like they're numb to the thoughts of it. But then when they actually see it in black and white, all of a sudden it's clear as day, because as you said, we don't treat ourselves or afford ourselves the same level of compassion that we do our friends. So
exactly. Yeah. And if you write it out, or if you're too ashamed to say it to other people, if your first impulse is I can't tell anyone, that's a red flag.
Yeah.
You know, that's probably, you know, it's an indicator that your story may not, you know, may be abuse. And if there's shame there, and it's also an indicator that you need to say it. You need to say it out loud and sort of, you know, pop that cherry and get it out so that you can, why do we call it popping a cherry? I don't know. Anyway.
That's a whole other podcast, Kate.
Sidebar and not relevant, but
like, but kind of. I kind of had the same thought. I was like, why do we say that saying? I really, literally, you like read my mind in that moment.
So anyway.
Anywho.
Now you know where my brain goes.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, I think that's really it. And then the other aspect to the work is the interpersonal, right? So then there's the internal, and there's the external, and then there's the interpersonal. What are your communication skills, and like, what should a healthy relationship look like? So many of us don't even know, you know? So, you know, those are the processes. And I think that, you know, you and I do similar things on, you know, again, bookended, right? But I think we both have a similar goal, and I'm sure you've spewed these stats before, but if not, you know, but I'll remind the audience that, you know, you know, if the divorce rate for first marriages hovers around 50%, the divorce rate for second marriages hovers around 68 or 69%, and for third, it's around 74. So the reason that this is because we're not doing the work to figure out what went wrong the first time, right? So we're just like, I'm just going to divorce him, and, you know, moving right along, and I'll get another one. But you're the common denominator. And if you're not working on this stuff, so when I get people at the should I stairs, you know, you're on the other end. And if they haven't done this work, when they get to you, this is going to heal all of this stuff so that they don't make the same mistake, or make the same choices. And, you know, what I do is I help them try to heal that stuff first, so that when they make the decision, it's not made out of anger or resentment or bitterness. It's really made from a place of, isn't that interesting? I totally do that. And I make these choices. It's not his fault, right? There's no right or wrong. It was just not a good match. And maybe there is right or wrong, but I can still be responsible for myself and my peace, so that, you know, if you decide to go, you're actually doing it from a place of completeness with the relationship, and you are far less likely to get into litigation and end up putting your kids in the middle. Because that's what litigation, you know, can do.
Yeah. And I think that you just kind of segued us into something really important. And I literally quote you, I feel like almost every day. I'm like, oh my God, Kate Anthony says the most brilliant thing, which is true, which is, you just said it. When we put our kids in the center, It's different than putting our kids in the middle. And I would love for you to explain to everybody listening the difference.
Oh,
Because I know that, I'll let you tell the story, but that was a really important, I don't want to say lesson, but it was something that you heard that was really valuable to how you shifted in your healing process.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. It was. And it was actually said to me by our attorney, by our mediator, who was like, the very first question that you have to ask yourself is, do you want to put your son at the center or in the middle of this divorce? And we were like, well, duh. At the center, of course, everything. We want every decision to be about him. And he said, okay. And he said, I'm going to remind you of that. And because it may seem obvious now, but as we get into this, things are going to get a lot more tricky.
Yep.
And we were like, whatever. Okay. And he was right. Like there were times but I'll tell you what, when you put your children at the center of every decision that you make, it's literally like putting on a pair of glasses. You are putting on just a fresh lens, right? And so you can be walking around being like, so what happened, probably the biggest lesson was in whether or not who should keep our house. And I was like, I'm the stay-at-home mom. Obviously, I should keep the house. Duh. And then my ex said, and this is like in our first mediation session. And he said, but I am already disenfranchised. I am the working dad. I'm out of the house most of the time. And if I get like a random apartment or something that's new, like everything about me is going to be a little bit disconnected. And he said, Kate, anywhere you go is home to our son. You are his home. And if I keep the home, at least I actually have that for him. And I wanted my house. I loved my house. It was my house. But when he said that, I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. And if I put on the glasses, the lenses that are what's best for my son, I can't really argue that point of view. I really can't argue that perspective. And maybe it really will be better for our son. Because it's true, wherever I go is home. I'm mommy, and I had been home with him for 3.5 years. So of course, right? And, and that's what we did. That's what we did. And it was, let me tell you, it has not been easy. He just sold it. And, and it's like, oh, and I went and said goodbye to it. It was very sweet,
Oh, I love that.
But, it was very difficult. One of my the biggest heartbreaks of my divorce was losing my house. And I did it for my son.
Hey, it's Wendy here with a quick break from the conversation. Are you somebody who wants to silence those negative voices inside your head, create healthy boundaries, and find your true voice and identity to create a life you design instead of feeling stuck with the one that you have? I want that for everybody going through divorce, and that's why I created the Divorce Rehab. So if you're ready to move to the other side of divorce more quickly with accountability and tough love, and you want to create your next best chapter, keep listening. I'm inviting you to learn how to start setting boundaries with your ex today. It is so crucial for your sanity and self-worth. So if that's something that you're struggling with, please go to wendysterling.net/boundaries to watch my free webinar today. And now let's get back to the show.
There's two things I want to point out, right? You acknowledge the feeling of, I want my house. It's my house.
I really wanted my house.
Right? Big step, acknowledge.
Yeah.
And then you shifted because you know that this is about keeping your son in the most stable environment where he is not feeling the impact of the relationship between you and your ex-husband, that he's still, and I truly commend you, because I was like, I'm keeping the house. The house is mine. I am still in my house. Like I am on the opposite end. I was like, I'm keeping the house. The house is mine. Now he didn't want the house.
Well,
So
there you go. Right. Perfect.
easy.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I had the same thought process, except that I was like, well, I am their home and I am staying in our home. Like,
Right. Yeah. It's just,
right.
I mean, it's different, and he didn't want it. So that's like, that was fine. But so here's where the difference is, right?
Yeah.
Because this is what would have been what the difference is. That's putting your children at the center, right?
Yep.
There was no argument on your part.
None.
House. Here's where it gets tricky. If you make the house more important than your children, that becomes a sticking point, and I'm not giving it up and you're not giving it up. And now we're going to have to get litigators involved, and litigators, you know, especially in California, you know, the kids are sort of the pawns, right? We're talking.
They are 100%.
They're always the losers in
Yep.
litigation, right?
Yep.
Whether they're deliberately put in the middle or not, when you have parents that are fighting and are pushing and pulling about anything, it's the kids who suffer. And so, you know, putting your kids in the middle can look like, I want the house, and so I'm going to withhold custody of the children because I'm going to use that as leverage because that's all the leverage I have, right? Or I'm going to, fine, you want to keep the house, then I don't pay you, you know, the spousal support that you need to be able to survive and get back on your feet again.
Right.
And so therefore the kids suffer because now we can't afford groceries, or, you know what I mean? Like, there's so many ways that you can put your kids in the middle of a divorce process that isn't even specifically putting it in the middle. It's the ripple effect.
Exactly.
Of that. I love, Ben always talks about, 1 + 1 or 2 + 2 = 4, or, 2 + 2 equaling like, 6 billion or something, right? Like that, if it equals 4 for your kids, that's all that matters. Right? For me, 2 + 2 equaled like 7 billion when it came to like losing my house. But when it came to Emmett, it was 100%, it was 4, and it wasn't a question.
Yeah. And I think that, I think it's beautiful that you came from such a loving place as it relates to him, and that you were able to then create what ended up being a really amicable divorce. And I would love for you to share a little bit more with everybody around how it is that you were able to get to that place. Because, same thing in all these forums and our Facebook groups, like, blogs that we read, right? So many people are like, I really want my divorce to be amicable, but I don't know how to go about doing that. He's upset. I know he's hurt, or she's hurt. I know she's upset. How do we keep this amicable when emotions, right, are on the table as well?
Yeah. And the first thing I say to everybody is, do not compare the beginning of your divorce process to mine 11 years down the line, right? So what I have created with my ex-husband has taken 11 years, and it is always shifting. Yeah. We went from horrible, contentious, very, sort of vitriolic marriage to an immediately wonderful divorce, right? Immediately it was like, we're best friends and we did everything together, and it was like, Heidi ho. And then it took a dip, right? Because what I realized is that I hadn't actually fully emotionally divorced him, that I was using our friendship as a way to stay connected, and that we were still engaging in many of the same dynamics that we had been. And I needed to cut that. And we went through a very rough patch for a couple of years where, not very graciously, I kind of had to cut it out, and it went badly, and I completely screwed it up. And then I had to go make amends and, do a lot of repair work with him. And then his wife didn't talk to me still for a couple more years after that. And we had to kind of deal with that stuff. Sure. The fact she wasn't talking to me was not about me, but it's fine. And perfectly reasonable. She was trying to have a relationship with this man, like aside, separate from me. Like, you know what I mean? She didn't need me in their relationship. And so, it takes a long time. And now we've sort of gotten to a place where we're really friendly. we're in a band together, but I'm still constantly having to navigate the boundaries, right? I'm having to like, oh, that didn't quite feel good. That means, look at that. There's another boundary that I had, a little part in my fence, my boundary fence, that I have to reinforce.
Right.
Or there's a gate that's been there. I don't think I want that gate to be able to open anymore. So I'm going to like, take out the gate and put on more fencing, right? And that's sort of how boundaries work. You're constantly having to find them and adjust them in divorce, right? I say that divorce is a living, breathing entity. It will constantly evolve as you go through it. So I would say to people who are at the very beginning stages and things are, contentious and stuff, that's okay. Don't force it. Do your work. Do your work. Focus on yourself. Keep doing your work, and then keep doing some more work, because it's that healing and the work that you do that will enable you to come to whatever dynamic and relationship is going to work for you guys. And that may be different for you than it is for me. You have a very different relationship with your ex, Wendy, than I do with my ex, right? It's always going to be different.
Yeah.
So, and doing your work will reveal to yourself what's appropriate for you.
Yeah. And I think you also just highlighted something really important, which is that, you said in the beginning, it evolves, and it really does. And it's not to say that it's a roller coaster where it's tumultuous. It's just that you're on this ride and there are turns that come up, but it still sets you on your path, right? I like to say that our, detours are ways that the universe is pointing us in a better direction. And, as my story, and, I'm very vulnerable, and I share my story, my ex-husband and I are finally at a place where we actually are the closest we've ever been. I don't know if COVID had something to do with that or not. But it really, we are at a place now, and we're talking, it took us 3.5 years to get there, right? And I think it's important that we don't put judgment on ourselves, right? Like you didn't, you rode the ride and you went with it, and that you're going to come out of it at some point. And I also like to encourage people that, just because things are the way they are now, right? I didn't have an amicable divorce. And at no point did I say, this is how it's going to be forever. I knew that that was just what it was until it wasn't going to be. And I still held out the possibility that something different could happen, right? Which everybody has access to if you do the work, because at the end of the day, you do have control over what that relationship looks like. And I think it's really important that we take the time to do the work, because we don't want our kids to feel like collateral damage, right? So many people stay because we're afraid of what divorce is going to do to our kids. I literally, the year I was separated, I was like, I need to go back. I can't do this to my kids. I can't do this to my kids, right?
Yeah. Oof.
So, and I know you get that question a lot too, right? People think divorce is going to mess up their kids.
Yeah.
So what's your POV on that?
My POV on that is that actually statistically research, like tons of research that has been done, long-term effects. They've studied the short-term effects of divorce on kids and the long-term effects over like 20 years. Mm-hmm. And what they have found is that, yes, divorce impacts children in the short term. Of course it does. We're not going to sugarcoat or, be Pollyanna-ish about this. Of course it does. But they heal very quickly when the divorce is done in a way that is respectful and doesn't put them in the middle. And that the long-term effects of divorce, the only thing that impacts the long-term effects is contentious, nasty litigation. And that kids who go through really contentious, nasty divorce battles, who are dragged through this and put in the middle, they have, increased incidents of addiction and anxiety and, trauma and attachment issues, relationship issues down the line. It has nothing to do with the fact that their parents divorced. It has to do with the trauma that they're put through during the divorce. So, if you're thinking like, I can't do this to my kids, or like, if that's the number one, and PS, the long-term effects of living in a house with an unhappy relationship and with parents screaming at each other, with all of that trauma happening in intact families, right? It's the fighting, whether you're getting divorced or staying together, it's the fighting that creates the trauma.
So, or your kids seeing you not speaking and living in separate bedrooms,
right?
And not knowing, right, what's going on.
Not knowing, that's almost worse. But nobody is talking about the elephant in the room. Mm-mm. Children grow up, they learn to doubt their own experiences, their own experiences of reality. And so, and even if, the other thing is that the research bears out that even if only one of the two homes is safe and nurturing and loving, it is better. If you're divorcing someone who is volatile or abusive, verbally or emotionally abusive, if they're physically abusive, deal with that. Get the kid out of that home. But, if there's some narcissism or not treating the kids well or anything like that, even then, if you stay with that person because you think you can like mitigate it, and be there, and you're co-signing. You're co-signing that. If you leave and you create a home that is loving and nurturing, even if only one of the two homes is loving and nurturing, the kids have a far better chance of growing up and having healthy relationships as adults than if you stay. Yeah. So there's not a lot of data that says research that supports the idea that we should stay in unhealthy and unhappy marriages.
Yeah. And I love when you get into your geeky neuroscience, because you're speaking to like my heart when you get into the research stuff. So I get all like giddy when you go there. And I really want people to hear you, because what I know to be true, and, I'm sure, I know Emmett was a little bit younger, my boys were 7 and 10 when we separated. And my 14-year-old, who was 10 at the time, now says to me, he goes, seeing you, and, of course he's sad that his dad and I are not together, right? And he also sees how much happier we both are apart, which makes him happier. And I can't stress enough that if you being happy and you being your best self means not staying in a marriage that makes you become somebody that you can't look at in the mirror every day, it is long-term. I just got goosebumps. Long-term, it's more beneficial for you to take care of yourself.
Yes.
Because in the end, right, it benefits your kids. And it's Absolutely. And we're both moms. It's so hard to put ourselves first, right? I had to learn how to put myself first. Yeah.
I never did.
None of us do, right? No. And none of us talk about how we never put ourselves first, because again, that's what society expects us to do as women, as moms. And all it does is hurt, it hurts others in the process. And most importantly, you lose yourself in all of this. So anyway, I'm off my soapbox, but
no, it's 100% true. And I think, what we have to remember is we are the model, right? Yeah. We are the model. And I just had this amazing experience that I want to tell you about, which is my son had his first girlfriend. And here's the deal. When my son was 3.5, I had this moment where I realized that if I didn't leave my ex, my son was going to grow up to treat women the way that my ex treated me, which was terribly. And that he was going to grow up to pick girls and women who were, sort of meek and compliant and codependent and all of those things, right? And I could see it. I was like, this is what we're modeling to him. He has no chance of creating anything else, right? So if you're looking at your marriage and you're thinking you should stay for your kids, look at what you're modeling. Look at what you're, because that is exactly what they'll do. Because if you look at yourself, probably you're making similar choices, right? So cut to 11 years later, my son has his first girlfriend, and it's like he shows up, he calls her every day, he is kind and loving, and she talks, and has been talking to him about the fact that like she's dated a couple of other guys, you know, they're young, 14, 15. And she's dated a couple of other guys, and they didn't treat her very well. They were only after one thing, and she felt, you know, that pressure. And he's like, I don't even like, I just want to talk to her. I just think she's so interesting, and we have so much in common. And it's his first girlfriend because he was interested in finding someone who he actually connected with. And she's a musician, she's a singer, and that's important to him. And I was like, oh my God, thank God it worked.
I was going to say that's such a proud mama moment, right?
Oh my God.
We have all these dreams for our kids that we want, right? I mean, that's a big thing. I hear you. I mean, I want my boys to see what a loving relationship looks like. I want them to see what it means to stand up for your beliefs, to also own your feelings, to feel comfortable sharing them. Yeah. And when that happens, right, where I can't wait till my son gets a girlfriend. I'm like so excited.
It was like the great social experiment of the decade. I was like, and
high five, Kate.
Oh my God,
you go, girl.
Let me tell you, and my best friend was over the other night, and he was talking about it and stuff, and they actually broke up. And like, even then in the breakup, you know, she was like, I need space. I've got some personal stuff I'm working on. And he's like, okay, I'll give you space. Like whatever you need, let me know. I'm here for you. Like, who does that?
Your baby.
Like that. And my best friend was like, baby, we did it.
Takes a village, Kate. It really does.
Oh, like, I can't believe it. I can't.
What beautiful, you know, and look at your story, right? Look at how far you've come from, you know, what is it, 12 years ago, if I'm doing the math correctly. You know, it's beautiful, and you have so much to be proud of. And you are an incredible example to so many of us who, you know, not only learn from you, but also get to have access to your wisdom, and you're living it. You're living what is possible when you do the work and you make the right decision for yourself. And sometimes that means staying. It doesn't always mean going.
That is true.
So
Absolutely.
It's about being true. So, oh my goodness, Kate, you and I could talk for like another hour. I absolutely. I know.
When the pandemic's over, we'll be able to have lunch again.
Yes. I would love to do that. I miss our little lunch date. So we'll have to do that again. But I'm so grateful for you being on here today. Please let everybody know how they can get a hold of you. And if they're interested in setting up a call, how can they find you?
Yeah. The best place is on my website. It's kateanthony.com. And on the front homepage, you'll find all the boxes. You can find my Facebook group. You can find my podcast, the Divorce Survival Guide podcast, recently named in the New York Times. Just want to say that.
You absolutely should.
You know, any number of things. I have a Should I Stay or Should I Go quiz on my on the homepage as well. So that's really the best place. You can find me on Instagram at the Divorce Survival Guide, and on Facebook. If you know, my group is Should I Stay or Should I Go on Facebook. So if you search in Facebook for Should I Stay or Should I Go, you'll probably find me.
Wonderful
places. Yeah.
Yeah. Wonderful. And all of this will be in the show notes as well for everybody to access, so they can get a hold of you. And obviously anywhere anybody has access to me in the promotion of this, I will be tagging you everywhere. So yes. Kate, thank you so much for being with us today. I really appreciate it. I absolutely love and adore you and love the work that you do. So thank you for living just true to you and educating others on what you've learned and how others can live a more true life for who they are.
Thank you, my love.
You're
So
so
good to
welcome.
talk to you.
You
Thanks
too,
for having
my
me.
dear. Of course. And everybody, thank you so much for tuning in today. I don't know about you, but I heard a lot of amazing nuggets of information that I am going to remember. So I wish the same for you, sending you all tons of love, light, and joy. Mwah. I will see you guys on my next episode.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Divorced Woman's Guide podcast. If you like what you hear, please share this episode with someone you know or spread the word on social media. This is how I reach more divorcees around the world and provide them with the support they need to create their next best life. And I would also love to continue the conversation with you. So please friend me on Facebook, join my private Facebook group, The Divorce Rehab, and follow me on Instagram at Divorce Rehab with Wendy. I'll see you next time.